Welcome to the Poisoning Podcast. I'm your host, Erin DeLulo. In today's episode, we sit down with Nick Long, founder and CEO of Sharpen Recovery, one of Texas's largest and most impactful recovery housing organizations. What began as Nick's personal journey of redemption has grown into a movement. 17 homes with an 85% sobriety success rate. Nick shares how faith, community, and a bold leadership turned pain into purpose. Because for Nick Long, this isn't just a program, it's a process of rebuilding lives. Nick, welcome to the Poisoning Podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
So glad to be here.
This fall, I came across so many people in the rehab or recovery space talking about the scandals in recovery. So I am happy to have an operator, I guess I can call you an operator or owner of Sober Homes, and someone who is in recovery themselves, and to sort of talk about how you run your programs in the organization, what you're seeing in this space, how your personal story has led you to where you are today. So I'm very excited about this. And I want to start with just telling us a little bit about Sharpen Recovery.
Yeah. And it's sad that you've heard about those stories. I've heard them too, where there's operators not operating with high integrity or just for the right reasons. And so Sharpen was, like you mentioned, kind of birthed out of my own recovery from substance use disorder. 2016, I got sober. And shortly after that, I felt like God called me to this work. And I just felt like it was an assignment for me to get into this work. And everybody that knew me knew that I was 21 at the time whenever I got sober. And, everybody that knew me knew that I was like this kid that was committed to doing this thing. And that thing was Sharpen Recovery. And so the vision was recovery housing, Christ-centered substance use recovery housing. And so we opened our first house in 19. It was 6 beds, a little white house. And that's when the dream kind of came to reality. And I was able to bring everybody over to the house and say, I told you I was going to see this happen. So we operate now, there's 17 locations in the greater Houston area. We're actually the largest accredited recovery housing organization in Texas. And it's been amazing to see what God has done through our operating of recovery houses. We've been able to serve over 1,800 men and women through our houses since 2019. Beyond the houses that we operate, we have formed a network in the city of Houston that we've called the Houston Recovery Residents Network. So there's about 40 organizations or so that gather a few times a year, and we talk about resources that are helpful for the industry. We talk about care standards and how the care standards can be just how we can increase the care standards. And we try to drive collaboration across the industry. And it's been a really special thing to see. There's about 800 beds represented at these gatherings. And one last thing about Sharpen that I'm super proud of is that we recently this year kicked off what we call the Recovery House Launch Cohort. And so in our first cohort, there are 7 individuals that joined who want to open recovery houses. And so we were able to kind of impart the wisdom and experience that others have shared with us and that we've learned and kind of bring them through it was an 8-week, the first one was 8 weeks. And we think that all of those 7 are going to open a recovery house. Our second cohort starts in November, and year to date, there's been like 35 applications from people who want to open recovery houses and join the cohort. So, and one was a former Sharpen participant, which we think is pretty cool.
So these cohorts, you are training others to open sober homes, but you're doing it and they'll go off and start something totally separate. You're not necessarily getting a financial benefit from it, or are you?
Right. So they'll open houses that are their own. They're not under the Sharpen umbrella. And we actually have them sign a waiver that's like, hey, what don't hold us accountable for what you do later because it's not under the Sharpen umbrella or affiliated in any official capacity. The first cohort was free. We wanted to kind of engage the value that it really was. The second one, we're trying to get some skin in the game. So it's like $250 for the cohort, the second one. So Yeah.
Is there a lack of beds in sober living in Texas right now or sober
Yes.
housing?
Yes, there is. Texas is 33rd, ranked 33rd, um, like, compared to other states when it comes to recovery houses per capita. So, you know, there's recovery houses I think needed in all the metro cities, but I think Texas needs more than some other states, and it's not only a lack of beds in general, but there's a severe lack of accredited beds in
Mm.
Texas. So there's you know, I'm sure you're familiar with like the NAR and accreditation for recovery housing and stuff, but we can talk more about that.
Yeah, so with these what is the waiting list right now, or what's a wait time for someone to get into one of your facilities, Nick?
So, amazingly, there's not usually a wait time to get into our houses. There are at some locations, like our houses on bus lines are in
Mhm.
higher demand than our houses that are not on bus lines. So we're actually in the process of moving 2 houses into the city where there's public transportation.
Mhm.
We have wait lists for some of the houses on public transportation pretty often, but, and that's always sad because we say all the time, it'd be amazing to be full and, have availability all the time, and, think, people are leaving all the time, for good reasons, for bad reasons, sad reasons, and then people are coming all the time, but we, it seems like we are always kinda able to offer a bed, but the public transportation is really where people need that. It's typically is a wait there more often is a wait list for those houses.
Transportation is something we continuously hear about is being needed to help with recovery. How do you get
Yeah,
to your job? How do you get to an appointment if you don't
right,
have a vehicle or you've lost your license? You have to
right,
have some type of transportation assistance or
totally.
access to it. And I think
Yeah,
that's what
and
the normal person forgets about.
yeah, right, and maybe not all recovery housing operators need public transportation for their residents or participants as much as maybe we do because
Mhm.
there's while, addiction recovery like, within addiction recovery, there's all sorts of demographics within that, exist, and so Sharpen, we a lot of those that we serve are people who have less resources than maybe, um, you know, a higher demographic of people who struggle with substance abuse.
So you have more of a lower income
Yeah,
level
and just
of
mhm, yeah,
patient.
and our price point is, like, nearly half the cost of others in the city too, and then that's even subsidized because, we, our costs are we charge, like, $695 at the most expensive house, but on average, it's, like, 650, and
A month? A
a
week?
month, yeah,
Wow.
and there's others that charge double that or more, and, it's yeah, but that's not what it costs us to operate the houses. So we're a nonprofit. We're raising money all the time to kinda keep keep the lights on at that price.
You are trying to assist people who couldn't afford it otherwise, and
Totally.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Another issue in
Yeah.
recovery, if you can't afford it or get in our, society doesn't give long-term recovery, whether it be actual detox and rehab, and your step sort of number 2 after leaving detox, going to a sober home. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, most of our participants come directly after a treatment program, like an inpatient residential, where detox is typically a part of that. But there is a big chunk that comes directly to us. Maybe they were in a, residential treatment facility a month ago and relapsed, realized going back with mom and dad was not the best situation for them. And maybe their usage isn't um, like going to create dangerous withdrawals. And so instead of going back into a lockdown treatment center, maybe they'll come to us directly. So some do come to us directly, but most do come directly from treatment center as kind of like a next step to extend the accountability in their recovery process.
And for those who are listening that may not really be fully briefed on a sober home, what do you provide in your sober homes?
Yeah. So we provide really the biggest piece is this peer support that's just built into the product of recovery housing. There's others that are living there that are wanting to go in the same direction. They're wanting to stay sober. They're wanting to hold each other accountable to doing that. So they get a bed. Let's see. They get accountability. They get drug tested. They get a lot of requirements, have, you know, really the oversight that they get, um, while with us is just what they're paying for. I mean, they're paying for that accountability, and they're paying for the structure, and they're paying for it to be a drug-free environment. And so there's a 2 peer coordinators, 1 peer coordinator and assistant peer coordinator that live inside the house with them. And we have a full-time staff that oversees all of the peer coordinators in all the houses. And so they they aren't paying for the lights and, you know, gas bill. They're on their own for food at Sharpen, but we are often helpful if somebody needs help with food initially. You know, most of the people, believe it or not, it's crazy to say most of the people that come to Sharpen um, get some sort of scholarship when they come. They're coming in. So about 57% of the people are getting like a $450 scholarship like on that $650 price. We're really working with a lot of people, bringing them in, try to point them in the right direction for employment so that they can kind of get back, to where they're able to have that skin in the game and contribute towards their recovery at Sharpen, which does help our sustainability and so that we can continue to operate in, more houses for those who need it. But
Is it your nonprofit that provides the scholarship?
yes,
Or
it is, but thanks to just like amazing philanthropy partners,
yeah.
um, raising funds to kind of be able to like take individuals in without the means to pay initially.
Okay, I am just very curious because in this project, I've met so many great organizations that cannot raise money. And it's hard. It's very hard. I was trained as a fundraiser. I did it for a very long time. Some people just don't like to ask for money. So, what is your secret, Nick? Because you're obviously doing well.
So let's see. It's a good question. It's an important question. And so let's see. I've learned from uh, some great people, like all that I know about fundraising.
Okay.
We have certain strategies that we utilize and there's other strategies for fundraising that we don't utilize. So, um, there is an organization called Seed Fundraisers that has some great coaches that can help with fundraising. We've been working with a seed coach to identify what our strategies are for fundraising. So ours are major gifts and grants. And Houston, um, there's a lot of like family foundations and just philanthropic foundations in the city that is where we primarily raise our money from. Yeah, I could talk on that for a while. I really love like that part of my job. And I look up to others that raise a lot more money than, we do. It helps me to kind of realize I've got a lot of growth ahead and motivates me to kind of continue to do more because we want to activate these people to generosity and involve them in this work and let them get to partake in the services of recovery housing through their generosity. And it's amazing to partner with these organizations and individuals to do that.
Well, congrats to you and to your donors too for supporting
Yes.
such great work. So let's talk about what someone should look for in a sober home. And I say that because when they're looking for one, it's probably a family member, right? Or spouse or love friend helping someone else out. I have seen these ads where it's like, pay for 3 months, get a discount. And I've learned from this venture, the Poisoning Podcast, that maybe you don't want to do that. If there's a deal in recovery, it's usually a bad thing. What's your thoughts on this, Nick?
That's interesting. I would be hesitant to put like a blanket, like to disqualify a group for having some sort of a,
Sure.
a discount or something. It could also be like just good business to to know your utilization in different seasons and have, just be able to expose your product via marketing in a way that's, you know, connects with the target um participant. So I could see that it could be done like by good operators in the right way. I'm sure. So uh, that's my initial reaction to that, but I want to be more helpful with answering the question
So what
fully.
should someone look for if they're looking in to helping a friend or family member
Mhm.
find a sober home?
Yeah. Well, to start, I would consider the accredited organizations,
Mhm.
the organizations that are accredited by the NAR standards, and each state has a state affiliate. Well, most states have a state affiliate. There's some states that are kind of not, they have not yet established an affiliate to NAR. But so in Texas, there's TROHN, TROHN, stands for the Texas Recovery Oriented Housing Network. And so on their site, they have a list of all of the houses that are accredited. And that'd be a great place to start because you know that they're accountable to operating with certain care standards. If you can take it a step further from there, like, obviously relationships are, if we know somebody that has had a good experience somewhere, or know somebody that was friends with an operator and they have good things to say about them, then we all know that like personal referrals are ideal. But and then like try to see if you can tour the place and just see what your experience is touring the place.
Handle relapse. We all know that the path to recovery and sobriety can be a bumpy one.
Mhm.
So how does Sharpen handle relapse?
Yeah, we've done a lot of things over the 6 years that we've operated. For a period of time, we had a house that was house 3, and it was kind of the house where we would send people initially who would maybe come to us directly, and they needed to kind of establish a little bit of stability before going into one of the other houses. And it was a house that we sent people if they were to relapse at one of the other houses and they didn't require medical intervention. Or so this house was kind of like a restabilize or stabilize house, and then kind of people would transition into other houses. We discontinued that house, and kind of sadly, just it's sadly, I think primarily because of just cost to operate that. You really want to have like a full-time staff that's at that house. We also wanted to just do just kind of like one thing well and not have like different versions of our programming in different houses. So, um, most of our existence, we've kind of been a no tolerance program where if people were to or are to relapse, we are sad to usually have to ask them to find a different place to live. We've recently started to have some like uh, basically a second chance type situation where in certain situations, if somebody is able to be honest about it, and I think there's a number of factors that go into our decision to allow them to stay if they were to relapse. But there's like we recently started to, man, I'm struggling here with trying to say this.
That's all right.
So yeah, for the most of our or life of our organization, it's been no tolerance, but recently we have started to give second chances in certain situations when they've been honest and open about it, and it's not something that requires medical intervention. But we're always trying to learn about what is best for our program and how to kind of, you know, navigate the challenges of addiction at Sharpen Recovery.
And Sharpen is let's talk about its faith-based principles. Can
Yeah.
you share that?
Absolutely. So I got sober, like I was saying, in 2016, and God really just changed my life. All of a sudden, I started to get afraid of everything that I was doing out of nowhere and just like got rid of all the drugs and crumbled up a large rock of cocaine and poured out all the pills and just like was afraid of breaking the law. And it was just like an amazing like fear that just came over me to doing anything unlawful. Shared that with a couple friends immediately and went to treatment. After treatment, went to recovery housing for a period of time. So went back into that environment thinking, I could do that again. I could live there and it'd be okay. I wasn't in a recovery house for very long. It was actually just like a month. And I wish I would have stayed there longer, but after relapsing at my parents' house, I moved in with a friend that was somebody that was committed to sobriety himself. He's not somebody who struggles with substance use disorder, but he knew my situation well. He was like a best friend and helped kind of keep me accountable to the recovery journey that I was committed to. But I say that so living with him, I really got to explore like my faith in Jesus and just help. He really helped me make sense of that experience I had where God kind of came in and just like changed everything for me. And so, like my recovery, the very beginnings of my recovery were like there's two things that were involved. It was Jesus and it was 12 steps. And where the two come together is my favorite thing in the whole world. And so when I got that vision to open Sharpen, you know, I knew that at the heart of the organization was going to be the reality of this disease of addiction and alcoholism, coupled with the power of Christ and the reality of who he is and his scriptures. And so Sharpen was kind of built on on that foundation. And, it impacts our programming and how we do what we do at Sharpen day to day.
Do you accept non-believers as patients?
We do. We do. And so full disclosure, I'm an AA guy. I like the Alcoholics Anonymous program. I
Mhm.
go to meetings most days myself. And I really love that Alcoholics Anonymous is a place where you can come, you can believe in, you're comfortable going there regardless of your beliefs. And we really try to adopt that at Sharpen. Most people know that we're a Christ-centered organization, but we accessible and welcoming and attractive to individuals who aren't Christians, but like we're upfront that at Sharpen, you're going to hear about Jesus. We're going to be praying about things. Our hope is in Christ at Sharpen, and we kind of try to we do make them aware of that, like from the beginning, like before they even accept, coming to Sharpen, but they don't have to be Christian and they don't have to go to church. We provide Ubers to church and we try to do everything short of requiring them to go to church, but they don't have to go to church. But they really can't escape like Christ-centered content at Sharpen because on Wednesday nights and on Sunday nights, we have gatherings and they're exposed to the gospel and we are okay with that.
Do you see faith as a vital way of recovering from addiction then, and why, if so?
Man, that's a big question. And I I
I mean,
think the short
how
answer.
about this? You have 85% success rate, right? Is what your website says. How many of those choose that path of Christianity? I mean, you might not have an exact number, but would you say a majority of them, and that sort of leads to their recovery and sobriety?
And what was your initial? Do you know how you worded your initial question?
Is faith vital to recovery and sobriety? Do you believe that?
I think it is. And, and for us, like it's sad when someone gets sober, but they don't find Christ. Honestly, it's sad to us. We celebrate that they get sober and we love that they get sober. But if somebody gets sober and doesn't find Christ, it feels like job not done. But
Mhm.
I've seen people who are sober for a long time that will tell you straight up, they will argue that God does not exist. And I don't know what faith that person has in something else. I'm sure that they have a faith in something else. Like maybe they have the faith in the Alcoholics Anonymous program or the group of drunks, like they call God a group of drunks, or a good orderly direction. Some people will kind of put their faith in something greater than themselves. I do think that faith is vital, but faith looks so different for so many people in recovery.
Yeah, I think you hit that nail right on the head. Well, we are coming up on over 30 minutes. If you were to tell, say, a policymaker, someone in Texas
Mhm.
who could help provide more funding in the addiction space, what would you tell them? What should they know?
Yeah. So recovery housing is an essential part of the continuum of care and addiction. Well, what is it? Association. What's ASAM? Do you know what does ASAM stand for? American Society of Addiction Medicine
Medicine.
acknowledges that it's an essential part of the continuum of care. SAMHSA
Mhm.
recognizes it's an essential part of the continuum of care. So in Texas, it's not a insurance billable service, recovery housing. But what is billable to insurance is outpatient, inpatient, detox. So I don't know why that is. And I don't even know. I don't even know if I think it should be or not. I haven't thought enough about it or played the tape forward enough to have a strong opinion on that at this moment. But let's see. Yeah, so man, there's so much to say about
So
recovery housing.
lawmakers should really understand and grasp that recovery housing and sober homes is a real key part of
Absolutely.
long-term sobriety.
Big
Like, we
time. And
can't skip over it, but I guess our system has seemed, and tell me if I'm misspeaking, you might believe that our system is sort of not paying enough attention to it because so many other parts in the recovery process you can get paid for by insurance or some type of funds, but not sober houses. So it
mhm.
makes it seem that people don't appreciate them as much or appreciate their role as much. Did I say
Yeah,
that right?
it feels that way. It feels that way. And
Yeah.
I think it's emerging as like something that is essential. I think more and more people are beginning to realize how important it is in the continuum of care. And studies certainly show the value in recovery housing, helping people to stay sober. At Sharpen, we see recovery housing as really the container where recovery capital can be developed and built. And recovery capital being the internal and external resources or tools that help people stay sober. So they're in these recovery houses, they're building relationships with a sponsor, others in recovery who are on the same road, they're working the steps, they're getting a job, they're saving money, they're learning to navigate the transportation systems. They are at Sharpen, they're working the Sharpen stages. We have a 5-stage program where they have things to accomplish in each of the stages. So in the first stage, they're getting an ID, they're getting a bank account, they are getting clothes for work, they're getting a sponsor. Progressing through the stages, we make a huge deal out of it. We celebrate each stage up on the last Wednesday night. On the last Wednesday night, all the houses come together and we have like an amazing just fellowship and time of celebrating all that God's doing in the lives of those in our program, and really just builds the culture at Sharpen, which I think is one of the most special things about Sharpen Recovery is the culture we're able to establish as we're able to gather all of our houses together so frequently and just celebrate the progressions. So completing the stages, people are have saved enough money to move out on their own. They're sponsoring others. It's incredible. And the people that are in the houses who are the peer coordinators that I mentioned are those that are people that have come up through our program that are successful themselves. So it's giving back to others is what helps them. And that's not a new thing either. I mean, A&M did a study about recovery housing. They came back with some recommendations to the industry and they said, we believe that people with lived experience should be in the decision-making table. And that's our staff is comprised of people who have lived experience. They been there, done that. They can help bring hope to those who are where they once were. And it's incredible to watch the organization get built by the people that are being served by the organization.
It's so great that you celebrate milestones. I don't think we do that as a society as much anymore since we're like all on our phones, or we like celebrate it on TikTok or Instagram, but not in person around a real community. And I think anybody who doesn't have an ID and then goes through that governmental process totally deserves like some balloons and a little party. I mean, woo, and that's it. They've lost. I want to repeat this. I probably sound a little bit like a broken record, but most people who have extreme addiction have lost their ID, don't know where a birth certificate is. This is a process that's not easy.
No, as absolutely. It's when you live with people that just did it last week, it
Yeah.
makes it so much easier for them to just like
Yeah.
hold your hand through the process. And that's the benefit of the peer community that recovery housing just offers those in recovery.
Love to hear that. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone go look for Sharpen Recovery, which we'll have in our Substack newsletter. Thank you again, Nick.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.